This interview between Cathy Newman and Jordan Peterson is a masterclass in trap questions and how to evade them by choosing your words, as Jordan Peterson says, very, very, very carefully.
You're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me.
So in January 2018, Jordan Peterson sat down for an interview with Cathy Newman on Channel 4 News. And this interview, I think, was the most transformative. We see the world, we make sense of the world through stories, through competing stories. And as she's trying to trap him and drive forward the story that she believes to be true and characterize him to fit that story, we see an ensuing conflict arise. In many of the stories that I believed at face value to be true, I had never questioned. The result was the realization that many of these stories are far more complicated, if not outright false, and the ability to understand these things is out there. You just have to know how to see it.
Women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies.
Yeah.
So the first story is around the gender pay gap. Cathy Newman lays it out.
You've got women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies.
Jordan Peterson acknowledges, yes, it does seem that way, but it's far more complicated. And in order to understand that, we need to apply multi-layered analysis.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just a fact of life. Women aren't necessarily going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying it's a fact of life.
There are multiple reasons for it.
Yeah, but those reasons, why should women put up with those reasons? Why should women be content
I'm not
not
saying
to
that
get
they
to the
should
top?
put up with it. I'm saying that the claim that the wage gap between men and women is only due to sex is wrong. And it is wrong. There's no doubt about that. The multivariate analysis have been done.
And I had always been presented the story, any inequality in an outcome, well, it's just by definition unfair. So this was such a fresh perspective to hear someone say not necessarily. It depends on why it's occurring.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman...
Not necessarily.
And on average you're getting paid 9% less than a man, that's not fair, is it?
It depends on why it's happening.
Otherwise, why would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've discussed at length? Why are women at the BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job? Well, that's not fair, is it?
Let's go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. 7 women, repeat that one. There's
7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay. Well, the first question might be, why would you want to do that?
The best way to contend with questions like this, try and detect what they're asking you, and then just answer in your own words what you actually genuinely believe. Don't worry too much about going point by point. Did I answer this that she was asking? Did I answer that? Because it's a trap anyways. So that's exactly what he does here.
That's not fair, is it?
Let's go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. 7 women, repeat that one. There's
7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay. Well, the first question might be, why would you want to do that?
Just by simply asking, why would you want to do that? I think many people they're rarely presented this view. It's like a breath of fresh air. Like, why would I want to do that?
So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on who defines it.
So you don't believe in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark ages?
That's because they're actually not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and I'm
they think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't
If
say
I was
that.
a young woman
equal...
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls. And that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
The patriarchal system is just
that's
fine.
silly. I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have battled quite hard to get where I've got to.
Good
so
for
that's
you.
okay. Battling is good. This is all about the fight.
It's inevitable.
And when he asked the question, why do you think you wouldn't have to battle for a high-paying position? He's turning it back on her.
About men fighting. I mean, let me just put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're
wouldn't
saying
you have to battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real conversations between men containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
You have to contend with the question. You either evade it or contend with it. So questions are extremely effective, which is why the most viral moment within this entire interview came when she asked him a question and he turned that question right back around on her.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. And that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Except you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
She's literally speechless. And there's a moment, I think, where the wall breaks down and we actually see the real Cathy Newman. She kind of smiles and she's more charming in that moment. It lasts for a few moments and then vanishes and she goes right back to the previous story, the previous version of herself.
Gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah. It took a while.
It did, yeah.
It took a while. You have voluntarily come into the studio and agreed to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
It lasted for a moment, but that moment was all it took. And poof, this changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's never happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning.
Then we moved to the story of preferred pronouns. And he calmly, clearly clarifies that this is not the case, that this is really a story about compelled speech. This is not really about preferred pronouns at all.
What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said.
This really has nothing to do with whether or not I will use the pronoun. I'm just saying I will not stand for the government compelling me to do so. And people conflate the two, but these are two separate stories.
And then the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that grossly...
Well, only in the broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian, which they are.
We then move to the next chapter of that story.
You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao.
The ideology of group identity and the dangers, he's trying to articulate the dangers surrounding group identity and how it has already shown us through history the damages and the dangers of doing so.
You're saying that trans activists could lead to the deaths of millions of people?
I'm saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount.
Then we get into lobsters.
Tell us about the lobster.
Well, that's quite a segue.
And he's using lobsters because serotonin works on lobsters and that reflects human psychology. But the profound idea is that when you are victorious, you're more likely to be victorious moving forward.
And lobsters exist in hierarchies. And they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters. And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction, which it doesn't.
That's why many people found that book so fascinating, because they're like, oh, there are adjustments that I can make that will help me become more effective and more likely to be victorious in the things that I'm taking on. This connects with the idea of stand up straight with your shoulders back. He connects this to how a victorious lobster, once a lobster is victorious, we can see the body language of the lobster is affected by the victory. And that compounds and compounds almost into exponential growth. And this is a profound idea which incentivizes people to do everything you can, whatever is under your control, any steps that you can take to be victorious. It's absolutely essential to do so, because that makes it more likely that you will be successful in the future.
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organize our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
I'm saying that it's inevitable that there will be continuity in the way that animals and human beings organize their structures. It's absolutely inevitable. And there is 1/3 of a billion years of evolutionary history behind that.